I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Players, and we are very glad to be with you right now.
Well, sort of glad.
I'm glad. We got two guests. It's a two-guest day.
It's a cool too.
It's a weird guest day, too, because one of the guests, you're just going to have to wait and, see who that is. But it'll be worth the wait.
Oh, it will be. So, fascinating human being, among other things.
You would say that, actually.
Yes.
But we were supposed to, I guess, let's apologize. I'll apologize.
No, it's both of us.
We were very excited, really looking forward to doing a watch party for this week's Pega World Inspire event, because we just like doing, Pega events. Because we really like the people involved.
Right.
I mean, let's just be honest about it here.
Yep.
They're good folks. They're talented folks. I mean, they're smart folks, but they also are multi-talented, do all sorts of stuff. So we enjoy
comedy, music.
Enjoy that. Comedy, music, great singing.
Yeah.
Great guitar playing, all that kind of stuff.
Well, that kind of falls under under music.
Okay. Well, it's a very layered approach to it.
Oh, that's true. You are doing the highly nuanced version of the.
I am going nuance. You're going center out.
That's right. Deep into the weeds.
Look,
but center out.
I'm looking in the green room, and our guest is giving me a sign of, I appreciate that. So there it is. That center out really got him.
I know. Right. Yeah, I know why too, which we'll get to, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll get to. Oh, look at this. Christy with this. Wait a minute. Christy's the first commenter. You know what that means?
Yeah. Oh, and we have a second commenter now too. Whoa.
I'm guessing that is Bob Fagel. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Christy is saying, really? Dancing on tables? Really? Okay.
I think she
should have told me that, because I'm going to leave you in suspense all that much longer then.
That's right. We have to go get a table.
I really feel funny because we have not started a show really without Spin doing the comment, and I can't even remember how long it's been. I hope he's all right.
But we worry. If you're not here, we worry.
We worry, but we got to go because we had technical difficulties during the Pega World event on Tuesday, which kept us from doing the watch party. And then immediately following the watch party, we were really psyched because our buddy, Don Schuerman, who's CTO of Pega, he's CTO and something else. We'll ask him what that something
product something.
Yeah.
Product
VP
something.
of product something. That's a good title.
That's his actual title.
So we were supposed to have this really great post keynote conversation with Don, but because we couldn't watch, we couldn't do that. So we said, we still want to talk to Don. He's a really good guy. And we really want to hear what happened at Pega World, get his take on it, because we're just interested. So we came up with an idea. We said, why don't we invite Don to join us at the beginning of this week's show and just make it feel like it was the post keynote talk, just 2 days later. That's all.
We are so brilliant.
We are.
Brilliant idea.
So before we bring Don out, before I turn it over to Paul to do his venerable introductions, I thought I'd play a little piece of Don in action during this week's Pega World.
I don't know if you've experienced this, but there are these moments of clarity when you aren't distracted, when you can focus. You can think about one thing for more than 5 minutes or have an honest-to-God conversation with another human being, and those moments are so valuable, so bucket-filling. We need more of them. In fact, customers and employees demand more of them. or they'll leave. We're seeing that in the current job market and retention issues. We're seeing that in the way our customers are demanding better and more personalized experiences. And we have an opportunity to reset how we make decisions and how we get work done.
Yeah, that's some good stuff going there. I had to cut it short because, we actually had the real thing here. So why don't you do, as you normally do, the Venerable Paul Greenberg with the introduction.
All right. So both of us have known Don for a long time. And as Brent mentioned, he's the CTO and the vice president of product something, right? They spell something without the G, by the way.
Yeah,
product something.
Thing.
Product something. Right. Don is not only a genuinely brilliant CTO, but he is an accomplished improv comedian. He is a guitarist in the BYOB 2020 award-winning band, the Layer Cakes. He is also just a cool guy and somebody who he also has this capacity to take relatively complex technology concepts and break them down so that people can understand them simply. And he is really good at that. So, which of course is humanizing the whole thing. And thank God for that. And now let's just bring the guy on, man. He's just a cool guy. We got to start talking.
Gentlemen,
Right.
you got my title wrong. It's Vice President of Product something. That's FUMPIN. There's no H in there. So yeah.
We weren't sure.
Yeah.
You knew there was a thin in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's a something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we thought. That's what we thought.
Hey, man, thanks for making time to do this. We were supposed to talk to you directly following the keynote, but the technology gremlins got to us. So we're really happy to have you here. And I love that little piece, the little piece we played. A couple of things. I like kind of the way the camera was moving constantly in slow motion. You had the nice background with things happening. You were talking right to the camera. It was a really good look. It was a good, I think what was that, about 12, 15 minutes? And then, you had a partner come and join you, but it was a really nice setup to begin the day.
Yeah, we had a nice setup. I was lucky enough to do it with a woman named Katie Alberti, who is one of our fantastic product marketers. So it was a neat opportunity. Part of the entertainment geek in me, we found that we use this studio, and they have a technology in there that's basically what they use to film The Mandalorian. So it's like a 180-degree digital wall that goes around, and it's this high-def digital wall. But the cool thing is all the cameras are on a tracking system. So you don't project a flat image on the wall. You project a 3D world. And as the camera moves, the wall adjusts, so you've got depth, right? So if you watched Alan's keynote, he was in this kind of like garden space, but it looked really real and three-dimensional. And that's that tracking system providing like that cool sort of vibe and background. So
I was actually going to ask you, what park was Alan sitting in? Because it looked like it was a really nice park.
Well, he's not. That's entirely that digital world. So that's that entire digital rendering sitting behind him. So it was like cool. Again, we try to, we really didn't want this to be a virtual conference this year. We would have loved to have been in person. And when we did go virtual, we wanted to make sure that, again, we kept it visually engaging, dynamic. You get that camera movement, you get the interesting backgrounds. So it was fun to be able to play with that.
So given that we had no time at all because of mostly people watched us trying to solve audio problems for about 30 minutes, right?
There's nothing more fun than watching people troubleshooting. We've gotten into this thing now, right, where we watch people play video games, right? That's a whole industry.
Right.
Why can't we have like a Twitch for like troubleshooting tech? And we just get stadiums of people watching like the best troubleshooters in the world try to solve tech problems. I think that's.
And we'll just call it. Maybe instead of the quiz show we're going to have, we'll just do that. Tech troubleshooters. It'd be
troubleshooting.
like
Yeah,
Ghostbusters.
that'll work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Ghostbusters. We're tech busters. We're not tech troubleshooters.
Wow.
Right. We managed to break them. So what if you're picking the primary themes from this year? I mean, I think both of us, because we've watched your stuff since, know what they are, but could you explain what you think they are?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big themes that we keep kind of hitting back on, and frankly, right, it's sort of in our DNA a little bit, is if we've learned nothing over the past like year, right? We are in a world of like just constant change. There is no predicting the future because I don't think any of us know, right? What we're going to be doing. Where like we'd love to have an in-person event next year. All signs are pointing that way, but given how this world is going, right? So we're really doubled down on this idea of how do you build an architecture? How do you use software so that you can dynamically respond to change and do it in a way that's human, do it in a way that responds to the needs that your employees have, right? The world that they're living in, the needs that your customers have, and the world that, they're living in right now. And that in order to meet and satisfy and keep your employees satisfied, your customers engaged, you need technology that can respond and be active in the moment that they're in, whether that's how you drive engagement with real-time decisioning that can respond to them, whether that's how you put low code and capabilities in place so that you can be more agile in how you drive your business. So that was one of the big themes for us this year.
Well, I also noticed you were stressing simplicity too constantly, right? There was a constant theme of making things right, crushing complexity, making things simpler for people. And go ahead.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to like, to come to grips with the fact that like you can't solve complexity, right? Complexity is not going to go away. Both like just the world itself is complicated, right? Our technology is getting more complicated. Like, everybody loves microservices. Everybody's very excited about microservices. Microservices architectures are significantly more complicated than monolith software architectures, right? That's not to say they're not better. They're just significantly more complicated. So what that means, though, is it's increasingly important that you put in things that wall off that complexity from your end users, from your customers, that you cut through it. Like the example that I always want to give is the iPhone, right? This is a far more complicated piece of technology than my Commodore 64 computer that I first experienced computing on, right? Far more complicated. However, far easier to actually interact with, right? So it's how can you build that layer of simplicity on top of things that are actually getting under the covers increasingly complicated.
Absolutely.
So how does the acquisition of Everflow fit into this equation?
First of all, it's created a couple of us that are music fans have to keep reminding ourselves that we didn't acquire Evenflow, the Pearl Jam song. We acquired Everflow.
Well, I have a problem with almost saying Everclear, which is a whole other.
Yeah, or Everclear.
Right.
Well,
yeah, right.
My predisposition is to music, Brent. So I don't know where your predisposition go, but so Everflow is a process mining company, and a really talented team. Some folks who have been in that space for a while really have and done a lot, again, to take what can be some complicated data analysis and data science and put a really nice, simple veneer on top of it so that I can take data, process data, right, that's coming out of all these different systems and understand what's actually happening day to day. How are people actually doing the work in the business? When are they not following what I think is the ideal path? And when are they sort of end running around it and doing things that maybe aren't the most efficient way or aren't the easiest way to get things done? And we're interested in that. And we went through this acquisition because we've been thinking now for a while about how do I use data? How do I use intelligence to make my processes smarter and ultimately get them to the point that they are self-optimizing,
Right.
We did some of this last year when we talked about process AI and the ability to predict where a process was going, right? What Everflow and the process mining now brings us is it widens the view of data that we bring in. Because now we can look at data not just inside of Pega, but all of the process data for the stuff that's happening outside of Pega, and pull that data in and now use it to find additional places where we can optimize, where we can eliminate a bottleneck, where we could skip a step of a process that you don't even need to really do. So, the opportunity that we see here is to continuously simplify and optimize the workflows that our clients are deploying, because, as we've been saying, I think it's in simplifying those workflows and streamlining those experiences and automating the workflows that sit behind your customer service and onboarding a new customer and acquiring a new customer, fixing exceptions when they go wrong for your customer. The more we can streamline that and simplify that experience, the better efficiency you get for the business, right? And everybody right now is frankly getting interested in efficiency again, now that the economy is starting to look maybe to people to be profitable, while at the same time creating an easier experience for the employee, an easier experience for the customer, a faster response to the customer.
Well, one thing that does characterize you guys and has for years, and actually you could see it in this year's theme, is you're calling it self-optimization, but it's basically, and I'm using this word in lowercase when I say this, autonomous services, right? One way or the other. I mean, it could be business process level services. It could be an autonomous customer service offering, but autonomous services. And that's actually one of the things that distinguishes Pega a great deal from other companies. I've been seeing a lot of conversation recently around microservices and things like that, but your idea where you're aimed at kind of the vision of achieving, I don't know if this is truly achievable, but fully autonomous services of varying types is a unique one in the technology world that we're in. And I think that's a huge plus for you.
Well, and I think it's increasingly, important, right? Because, right now, the clients that I talk to, they're having real trouble staffing up their contact centers, right? They're having real trouble, actually building and having enough people to actually satisfy the demand from their customers. So they need more automation. They need more of that to be managed somewhat autonomously. And I think the way that we will get there is by not necessarily obsessing over a completely 100% autonomous world, right? I think this is a lot like driving cars. Despite all of the, predictions, I still think we are years and maybe a decade away from fully autonomous cars that drive themselves around the streets, right? But my car today will modulate its cruise control, right? And change speeds based on what the car in front of me is doing. My car today will warn me if I'm trying to change lanes, right, and I haven't put on my turn signal, or if it detects something in my blind spot. My car today, right, will stop if it detects something while I'm backing up, right? And those are autonomous capabilities. And what they do is they streamline the experience for me, the driver. They ensure that me, the driver, is safe and is actually following, the best practice, best routes. And I think that's where we begin to inject autonomy in the system, not as a necessarily replacement for the fact that we're ultimately going to still need people to talk to other people in a lot of instances, but to streamline it and make it easier and faster and better for everybody involved in the conversation.
All right. Don, thank you for making time to do this. We definitely wanted to spend some time with you after the keynote and get your title right and things like that. So any last kind of thoughts or takeaways that you want people to walk away from, Pega World 2 days removed, but any last things you want people to remember?
Well, look, I think some of the best things that we do at Pega World is we get to hear from some of our clients. So, there's a spectacular conversation with T-Mobile about how they are personalizing customer engagement. There's a spectacular conversation with Booking.com about how they are making their customer service and experiences better. So I would highly, if I asked people to do anything, it would be like, check out some of those, like check out what some of these clients are doing, because it's really powerful and really amazing. And the leaders we speak to just have this incredible vision around what they want their customer experience to be, what they want their employee experience to be. So I'd highly recommend that folks check out some of those conversations. I learned a lot from them. And if I can add with one final thing, go Celtics.
Yeah.
Right. We got.
We'll let you go with that one, though. I mean, we'll literally be okay with that.
Yeah, but only because it's not in the 80s where I was the hugest Sixers fan. And I could not stand Mikhail Bird, Parrish, Cornbread Maxwell, Danny Ainge, Jerry Sheestings, or anybody else wearing that color.
And, mine was the opposite. It's just I respected the Celtics of the 60s, right? And that's literally my only reason to like the Celtics in any way, because I love those guys. Casey Jones, Sam Jones, Bill Russell, Havlicek, you name it. Tom Saunders. I mean, they were amazing. They were.
Is that guy, Sat Sanders?
Sat Sanders. That's okay. Tom is his actual name. But so they were an amazing team, and I was a Knicks fan. We were terrible, but at the same time, that team was the team I looked to. I just loved it.
Well, my son and I are having a lot of fun watching Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Al Horford, and so hopefully we'll set up. Hopefully we're seeing some of the next sort of legends we can go back and talk about, because we like to celebrate legends in Boston.
Forgot about Jesus is here.
I was gonna,
right
down in Miami there.
That's where he's from. Sorry, Jesus.
Wasn't a good look last night.
Yeah.
All right, Don. Thanks again, man.
All right, thank you so much, man.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Love you. Bye.
All right. I can let him go now. There we go. All right. Well, I see our next guest is in the green room, and I really don't know how this is all going to work. This is going to be before we bring him on. I wanted to show you something that came up on Facebook today.
Yeah, I saw that.
Years of friendship with Paul Greenberg.
Yeah, what's funny about that one, as you noted, you're not in a single
I'm
one
nowhere
of
to be
pictures.
found. It's really funny. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I took every one of these pictures.
I think that's what it is. I remember you taking the picture at the Yankee game with
we were in
Ray in the background there.
Yeah.
Right. In the suite. And then Mei Lee, when we ran into her, when we were walking outside of Salesforce Tower, and there she was walking down the street. Right.
Yeah.
That was that one. And I don't know where the hell I was speaking about the digital customer.
That was at SAP. I remember that one.
That was at Sapphire.
Like 7 years ago.
And then the other one with John Reed and Ron Miller and Jesus is the one where we were eating at that restaurant watching in Vegas. That one
Emerald Sports place.
Yeah, that one where it has like stadium seating in it.
Yep.
That one where we were all eating there. That was that. And then
that
of
was
course
a couple of years ago. That wasn't that long ago, right?
I think the one with Jeremy Epstein was that's got to be
event?
Yeah, it must be. Wait, what's that saying? Yeah.
It's either Evolution or my event.
No, I think it's yours, because look at the background. It says
Georgia State.
Center,
oh yeah, that's Georgia State.
Student Center East. So that was where Jeremy and you took that shot there.
So yep, Vegas, Jesus. That was right.
Yeah.
All right.
I'd say I'd missed Vegas, but I
so 15-year anniversary between me and Paul Greenberg. I thought I would set this up so that you can now. I can't wait for this one. I want you to introduce our next guest.
All right. Just so people understand before we get to it, when I'm doing this introduction, I am not dissociating. Okay. I am not dissociating. Right. So here's the thing. I guess the best way to explain this is apparently there are a lot of very successful Paul Greenbergs in the world. I mean, not a lot, but let's say significant enough that, and I don't consider myself one of them, but if you want to look me up on Google, you have to put in CRM. All right. So for years, I've been tracking all these other Paul Greenbergs. I'm not stalking, I promise, but I've been
Yeah,
tracking.
we have to figure out, digging that some other time, why exactly you're doing that, but we won't do
But
that.
well, I was doing it because, especially during COVID, where I wanted to meet them all because, I wanted to meet them finally. But in any case, they, it turns out that several of them were very prominent in broadcast journalism. But there was this one Paul Greenberg who, if you look at his history, like EVP of A&E, right? Like the president of all digital properties at Time Magazine, like a VP in his earlier days, a VP of I think it was, I can't remember the actual title, full title, but he was a VP over at MTV back in the pioneering days when MTV was actually a meaningful
Playing music.
property. Yeah, it was right. It was a genuinely meaningful property. But there was an interesting theme that persisted in everything he was doing. Actually, the thing I'm most jealous about this particular Paul Greenberg, he started his career in New York sports on radio, actually, and I think in both cases, as a sports reporter. So I'm immediately jealous of that because that's what I wanted to do when I graduated college, which made it
Wait a
even
minute,
more strange.
Does he have a favorite baseball team?
Well, we'll find out when the time comes. So, and if you look though, he's literally led a storied career as a visionary, not just as a person running the show, but as a visionary, right? Because all his work is around digital properties and digital video and the digital world, and taking the existing broadcasting world into this new world far before it became a necessity. But but he understood it was going to become one. And then he left at one point, created a company of his own called Butterworks, and then recently, like last week, took over as president and I think COO of Cute Meet, which is I'll let him explain it. But he is our guest today, and I presume you can guess his name by this time. It's Paul Greenberg.
Look at that.
Which is very strange. Hey, Paul, how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, this is actually for me, especially, it's a real treat, really. I mean, I'm not joking. I really was tracking you for years. Right.
Well, it's
very kind.
It's a real treat for Paul. I have to say, it's a real trip for me. See, Paul Greenberg and Paul Greenberg. But welcome, man. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I just want to preface real quick. I'm in New York City, and so you may hear some ambient New York City noise. Unfortunately, it's been a very noisy day in the city. So I apologize in advance if that's the case.
You can never have to apologize for being in New York City.
Yeah, he loves the sounds of New York City. So.
Everything. There's nothing about New York City that's not.
The smells too, or
everything is good. Doesn't matter. Does not matter. Right. So, well, okay. So I mean, that, my intro really does characterize something that I think is really important, because I think there's an enormous number of people who are understanding, okay, now millennials and Gen Z are starting to move into, well, millennials in particular are moving into leadership positions, and they are making decisions of major import, and they're influencing decisions of major import. Gen Zers are now, people who have money outside of their parents' allowances, and they're finally entered the workforce. So how content gets created and distributed has not only has it changed, but it has to change for businesses to even function, I'd say, within the next 3 or 4 years. I don't know if you agree with that fully, but can you explain kind of your vision on this and how you came to this conclusion so long ago? Because you really did, and it's very noticeable in your evolution.
Oh, thank you. I've been fascinated by technology. My earliest technology purchase was when I used my bar mitzvah money in 1981 to buy a TRS-80 computer, which had 16K of RAM, and you had to save your programs on a cassette tape. So ever since then, I have been absolutely fascinated by technology. But it also very quickly melded with a passion for content. And so when you put content and technology together, you really do see distribution as the output of that. And you really do start to understand, okay, well, if I am making content, how do I reach audiences where they are? And it became very obvious to me early on that computers, mobile technology, social networks, all the different ways that people use to communicate and consume changed very rapidly. And it was, incumbent on me to help understand how that was happening, and then to create content that was native to those platforms in a way that the audience could really understand it and appreciate it.
So, okay, so here you are, you've got this.
I'm going to have to drop out just for a second, but you guys keep going.
I got it. All right.
Yep.
So here's the interesting thing to me. So you've got the vision, but you're also working for major entities like A+E, for example, or Time Magazine, who are traditional in terms of broadcast, right? And you have to change their effectively their outlook and worldview to get them to go with you. Now, I can't imagine that was easy. So and maybe it was, but how did you do that? I mean, how did you get them to buy in on the idea that, okay, the world's changing, here are the changes that have to be made, we have to make those changes?
I think it was, more show, don't tell, and really, helping them understand where the world was going, and then going out and doing proofs of concept, showing that there were new social networks that were popping up, new ways of creating content. In A+E, I had a great, talented group of people who I worked with on the digital side of the house. And we spent the first couple of months just creating content for Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and then we were able to go and say, back to everybody else and say, well, look how successful this was. Look at why this worked. Look at how this worked. And I had, real data to back up my hypotheses. And so I think that was one. The other one was to also, experiment. So we were able to use a lot of virtual reality, a lot of augmented reality to just kind of start to show people what it could be like. And even, in the boardroom, we were able to do a virtual reality exhibition that, made people understand, oh, I see how this could be a really interesting way to create content and to be on the cutting edge and to reach new audiences where they were. And honestly, they were very receptive to it and very supportive.
What was like, if you have to pick a favorite, take all your, let's say, your visionary roles in all your jobs, what would be like your favorite story of something you had to deal with? Because I think what you're doing is fascinating and also beyond relevant. It's like immediately necessary. So can you kind of fill us in on the story you want to tell?
I think one of my favorite memories was when I was CEO of College Humor, which was part of IAC. I worked with Barry Diller very closely. And we entered a deal with Nintendo to create content for their brand new 3D handheld gaming system called the Nintendo 3DS. And you didn't need 3D glasses for it. It was kind of an amazing piece of technology. But we had never did 3D content before because there just wasn't that much call for it at that point. This was 2011 maybe. And so I worked with the team. We came up with all these different prototypes and figured out how to create 3D content that you didn't need glasses for. And we created a series called Dinosaur Office, which was a series of stop motion puppets that were dinosaurs in an office. It was very funny. It was very cute. You can still find it on YouTube. But it was one of the most successful series that Nintendo had running. And we were very, very excited that we were able to kind of be on the cutting edge, but also, again, find new ways to entertain people in a new medium. And ultimately, it still is always just about storytelling.
Well, yeah. Well, and of course, that I think I'd say, given that the world that I'm coming from is the enterprise technology world or the B2B world, really. It's really interesting to see that world is pretty well adopted the idea of storytelling as the approach. They haven't implemented it necessarily all that well yet. Some have, some haven't, but they've at least they've reached a level of awareness that it's always all about storytelling, and that's just how humans interact. They tell stories. So, but here's the interesting thing. So you said early on you had this connection to technology right from the get-go. It strikes me really funny. You used your bar mitzvah money. My parents wouldn't let me touch my bar mitzvah money until I graduated college, right? And then I could do what I wanted with it. I think I took a trip somewhere. I can't even remember now. I didn't even care about technology back then. I mean, I don't know how I ended up in the technology world at all, right? So,
well, speaking of visionaries, you are certainly one, my friend.
Listen, I'm okay. I know that, but beyond that, not really. But I appreciate you thinking that. So, but here's the thing. So, after you leave kind of the corporate side, you create Butterworks, but that's a lot of people, if they hear that, they'll think, oh yeah, when it became a consultant, which is part of what you do, but you also created some technology. Now, I don't know how much you talk about it, but if you're willing to talk about it, that would be that's got to be Brent. There's only one that he got off so that we could write comments, right? So, right. I think he's going to let this roll. So anyway, can you talk, if you're willing, can you talk about what you've developed? I found it fascinating. Some of the research that you did that utilized the technology and what you found too, which was also this kind of one of those things. So can you talk through that?
Sure. So Butterworks was still exists. It's a digital video firm. And what we did is we did full production of videos, and we created videos, but we also built our own proprietary AI using two forms of AI called natural language processing and computer vision, where we had the computers look at the actual content going on in social videos to help figure out what was going on in the videos so that we could tell people what would be most effective for them to create videos for social platforms in terms of topics and subtopics, how long the video should be to be successful, who they should cast in the videos, what kind of facial expressions worked. So we called it Moneyball for digital video. We used deep data to figure out what was going to be successful before people make it.
Billy Bean didn't sue you, did he?
No, he did not. He did not.
Okay, good. That's fascinating. I remember many years. I really remember this. I remember many years ago. I would say in like early 2000s. I remember thinking about, won't it be great when you can search a video, like actually. And I was looking at it at the time more from the standpoint of search. Like you could go into a video and say find Chicago in videos or whatever, and you could literally had an engine that could find that. And you've already gone 50 steps beyond search of videos to what you've done, because you're literally boiling it down to the facial expressions that people, let's say, are most successful or are least successful. But one of the questions that comes across interesting, because the use of social platforms, also they're different. So a video for Facebook and a video for TikTok are two different stories, even though Facebook's trying to imitate TikTok with Reels now. But and same with YouTube and so on. Did your AI distinguish between those things, or could you make the adjustments necessary? Because that said, hey, this is for a TikTok video, this worked. Facebook video, that wouldn't work as well, but this would still work very well. Blah 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 blah. Can you do that?
Yeah, we did.
Wow.
We were very cognizant of that. It was very important to make sure that we were able to look at different platforms because, for example, let's say you are a video producer who creates animal videos. And so, if what we could tell you is, okay, on Facebook, you should create animal videos about babies and animals giving birth. and they should be 4 minutes and 30 seconds long. And you should start off with a surprised facial expression and things like that. But on TikTok, you want to start off with a disgusted expression, and it should only be 31 seconds long. And you should focus on, more sort of, ornate animals or fantastical animals or something like that, exotic animals. Right. And so we were able to very much distinguish among platforms, because when you're creating content for these platforms, it's got to be native.
So, okay, so there's a question for you. Clearly, that's not for me. So, let me sort of embellish the question a little bit. So that was a week ago, roughly, or 2 weeks ago, maybe at the most, that all of a sudden I saw the notification that you had taken this role. What brought it on? Tell us more about Meet Cute. Give us some more detail, because I was fascinating. I now know what you're doing, and it fascinates me too. Once again, so can you talk about how the role, how that all came about? Really?
Sure. So I was talking to a friend of mine at a venture capital firm in New York, and I had been thinking about moving away from my company for a little while. I did it for 4.5 years. And as much as I love being an entrepreneur, especially during the pandemic, it got a little isolating. And I was really starting to think about joining a team again, a larger team where I could contribute and I could work with lots of other people. And so what I did was I was starting to talk to people about what opportunities they were seeing. And a friend of mine said, oh, you really should meet the founder of Meet Cute. She's really amazing. And what Meet Cute is an entertainment company that creates romantic comedies or rom-coms. And they've actually created over 450 episodes already of romantic comedies that they own. Mostly for audio, mostly 15-minute podcasts. But they have over 450 episodes that they own now. And in fact, just yesterday, we announced a deal with a Hollywood company called Range Media, and they're going to help us start to develop some of those podcasts for film and television. So that's
Wow.
Really the goal, is to become, the sort of the modern day rom-com brand. The audience is mostly millennial and Gen Z. And it's an amazing company. The founder is super smart, and I think she's done a terrific job. And as soon as I met her, I thought, this is somebody I really want to work with. And so
I presume her name is Paula Greenberg.
Yeah, exactly. Not quite. Naomi.
Right, so that's actually really intriguing, because we know this. We know that millennials and Gen Zers consume content very differently than baby boomers and Gen Xers. And even though they've had, meaning the younger generations, have had impact on the two older generations in terms of consumption also. It doesn't go the other way around, but it does go that way. So how is aside from the fact that it's digital, how's a rom-com for millennials and Gen Z any different than a rom-com that played to, say, me in the 60s, you in the 80s, someone else even in the 90s? How's it different?
Two ways. One is, I think, some of the themes that are developing. We have extremely diverse themes in terms of characters, in terms of gender and sexuality and things like that. Differently abled people. So I think that's a little bit different. And so some of the themes are definitely more, you could say modern, or just, some that are you haven't seen necessarily in traditional rom-coms. But also I think that it's, again, some of the platforms we're going to be working on. We are already creating content for TikTok, short 1-minute rom-coms. And so,
Wow.
We need to, again, reach the audience where they are.
Wow, 1-minute rom-com. That ought to be interesting.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what you can do in 1 minute with a rom-com. Well, actually, I can imagine, because I watch TikTok enough to see fairly complete little stories being told in a minute. So I guess you could do that. Okay, so presuming success, you now work with, what was it, Range? What was the company? Range?
Yeah.
You work with them. and then they're helping you develop it for film and for TV. So you take the new format, you go to, I don't know, NBC or A&E or whatever. You go to somebody. I mean, I guess it wouldn't be A&E. Well, I guess it could be A&E. But you go to somebody and say, hey, we're addressing millennials, Gen Z. I'm presuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that right now, the interest on the traditional networks who all have digital properties at this point and are kind of, I've noticed, giving way to them. By the way, Josh Greenbergs is an independent industry analyst in my universe. He's a really good guy too. You'd love him. So anyway, so the giving way to their new properties, and NBC Universal has been around forever also. So they've all, and NBC Interactive, CBS Interactive, and so on. But would you have a lot of convincing them to do? I'm not saying based on the content, based on the idea. Okay. Would you have a lot of convincing to do, or would they be immediately interested? Because I'm presuming that they know that their world has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. How easy is it going to be to, again, aside from the actual rom-com, like or I don't know what you call it, like Girls Five Ever or something like that, but aside, that apparently sold Paramount Plus. I actually like it. How hard is it to sell the idea? Now, again, not the show, the idea to the networks, to the ones who are coming from a traditional perspective, but have clearly made lots of concessions and now are driving towards streaming and other things. How hard is that?
I think it really depends on the people you're talking to and the company that you're talking to. Some are willing to push the envelope a lot more. Some are still going to stay much more conservative. Some are going to say, we really prefer homegrown IP. It really depends on the kind of strategy that particular company has. And so, yes, we want to fish where the fish are and make sure that we're talking to people who have the attitudes that are willing to embrace the kind of ideas that we're bringing to them. And so I think, that's to some extent where Range can be helpful, and some of our other partners. And again, we also, from having been in the industry for a while, have a lot of different contacts that we're talking to directly. And I think, we're trying to gauge right now what that interest is going to be.
I think, first of all, I think the idea of Meet Cute's perfect. Ultimately, maybe 3-4 more years where millennials pretty much are going to completely run the show. Right now, they partially run it. Gen X still has a big swath, but they're a small generation too. And corporate world, they have a very big swath still. I think I saw an S&P study of the top 500 S&P companies, and the average age of the CEOs there is 59, right? So still Gen X, hanging in there
for a little while longer.
My generation, baby boomers, should have left about 8 years ago already. Oh, you're back after you've been pushing those comments everywhere.
I had to take care of something. That's all.
Yeah, sure. I know exactly what you were doing. You realize I know exactly what you were doing.
How can I miss out having a split screen of Paul Greenberg interviewing Paul Greenberg? This is great. But no, I was listening to the whole thing. It's really fascinating. So with what you're doing with Meet Cute, with these rom-coms, and you're recruiting all these kind of companies to help, kind of roll these things out. And I'm assuming, are you targeting, Gen Z and millennials for the most part?
That's where most of our audience is right now. I would say 85% of our audience is under 35 for the audio stuff that we've been doing. And I would imagine it'll stay that way as we move on to TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram and things like that.
How do you determine that the channel mix, and what kind of content to put with what channel?
So that's a great question. It really depends on understanding the data and understanding, how people are using the platform. So that, it's some experience, it's some gut, but it's also a lot of data where we're looking at how other things are performing that might be similar. We're looking at how our own content performs. One of the things we're doing is beefing up our data capabilities right away. As you heard, I'm a big proponent of content and technology working together, particularly data informing creative. And so I think that's where, we're going to try to set ourselves apart to some extent.
So let me go ahead.
I just had a quick follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Everybody's talking about TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, like the main things. Are there any up and coming social networks or channels that maybe us old geezers aren't aware of that you may be starting to look at and say, we probably need to start doing something over there?
Not yet. I mean, there are certainly ones that we're watching in terms of the way they're influencing Gen Z. So, for example, Be Real, if you're familiar with that, it's a new social. It's not a social network per se, but basically what happens is at a random time every day, you get a prompt. And you have 2 minutes to take a picture wherever you are. And it takes a picture with both your front camera and your back camera. And the whole point is it's real. You can't stage a picture. You can't go sit by a pool and have your hair done perfectly. It's like wherever you are, that's where you are. And it's blowing up right now. And so,
Wow.
We want to think about, well, maybe there are ways for us to take advantage of that kind of a platform. So it's really fascinating how quickly. But for now, the big dogs are still TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat. All of those are still the ones that we're really focused on.
I'm going to be fascinated how you handle Be Real, given that you're literally going to stage what you're doing at Be Real. Right?
You're going to sit there for 6 hours waiting for the prompt.
Come on.
Quickly, stay there.
Don't move. I have to go to the bathroom. Don't sit still. Right.
Be real.
Sit still. So, okay, let's put on your thought leader hat for a minute. So, again, you've been an expert in digital video for years now, and now, of course, that's become. If you have to pick a medium that's gained the let's say the greatest level of importance, it's probably digital video. It's overtaking pretty much. It's pretty much the way an enormous number of people consume content. Now, one of the things that I think is important is always production values when it comes to that too. And you guys obviously are thinking really closely about that with your AI, right? So, how do you, from the standpoint of being thought leader and visionary here, where do you see digital videos? What do you see as digital videos kind of next steps in order to meet the needs of these younger audiences? What does digital video have to become that it isn't already, if anything?
Well, without being flip, I think it does need to be more authentic and be real. Because I think that you don't want to necessarily have production values that are too high on TikTok. I mean, if you spend time there, you see it's mostly people just using their phones and using their phone cameras to take different pictures. Even people who are creating narrative videos are still using basically just their phones, maybe a little bit of a higher end camera, and using the editing tools that are built into TikTok. And so I think you want to be careful. If you see something that's too polished and too slick, it feels completely out of place on TikTok.
Right.
And so I think you want to, again, you really need to understand the medium and understand what the audience is expecting and what they're coming for to that place.
So when you guys would create at Butterworks, when you were creating a digital video, say not for a TikTok, just something that would eventually either be used in a corporate world or end up on YouTube, something more on the longer form. What kind of team did you put together to make that happen, given that you have such a strong technology focus and AI focus that makes your teams a little more unusual than most? Because I know a lot of people, their production team looks like, but they don't concern themselves with what you're concerning yourself with. So what did the team look like for you when you were
So
doing that?
we had a whole team of data scientists and
Holy cow.
data analysts, and we also then we had full production people, obviously, mostly freelancers on the production side, because you really do want to. It depends on what you want to do for each different client and for each different shoot. So especially from a creative perspective, you don't necessarily want to get caught in one rut, but but we would use data scientists to help do use the AI and figure that part out. And then they would work very closely with the creative teams and the production teams to help them understand what they should be creating.
Wow. That's amazing.
One other question that comes to mind for me is, so you're going to have all these shows and they're going to be targeted to, different specific kind of audiences. What's the plan or the strategy for building a community around each of those different shows? Like, for example, and this is Paul Greenberg's idea, so thanks for the idea.
You're welcome.
Of having a weekly happy hour, and we've been doing this for like
106 episodes. We got 106 sessions.
Wow. Sessions. And what kind of, I don't know if it was by design, but for me, there was no design. It just kind of evolved. It kind of became an extension to what we do with the show, and it's created a really nice little adhesive group of people that kind of surround the show. But how do you go about creating, a community around the rom-coms that you guys will be rolling out?
So we have community managers, and we've gone out to colleges and found people who can be our advocates and people who are proselytizing for us, and who are really interested in, who love rom-coms and who love what we're doing. And so they're sort of community advocates for us. We use Discord. We have a Discord server where people can gather and ask questions. And we're starting to think about other ways to incentivize our community to give them exclusive content, to give them access to things, behind the scenes content that they might not have gotten. They can get stuff earlier than other people. So those, it's sort of all of the ways that we've seen in the past, but kind of updated for a whole new ballgame in terms of making sure that there's community built around these kinds of shows, and around the Meet Cute brand in general.
Actually, that makes me think of another question, really. So you're creating all these rom-coms. Are they all actual people, or are you creating some animated, some actual? I mean, how are you doing that?
They're mostly real people. Well, certainly all the audio is real people, obviously.
Right.
So the voice actors. We're definitely working with animation. We have some ideas for some other really, I can't spill the beans yet, but we have some ideas for some very interesting other ways of telling stories that not quite animation, but something in the, akin to that in certain ways. Huh. And so there are a lot of different things that we're doing to help figure out how to tell those stories appropriately.
That's amazing. So how big is Meet Cute, just as far as the company goes? How many employees? How big is it? I have no idea.
We have about 1,400 freelancers that we work with.
Holy God!
So it's a big network. It's a big network.
Yeah.
And it's a great company.
How long did you say it's been around?
About 2.5 years.
Oh, wow. You're up to 1,400 freelancers in 2.5 years? Holy cow. That's enormous. Well, hey, Brent, it's probably that time, though. You're going to have to ask that time. You got to ask
this
it, though.
Is kind of weird.
Okay.
But, so, Paul.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite baseball team?
So I grew up in Washington, D.C., but this was pre-Nats. So my favorite team growing up was the Orioles because they were the closest team we had. Wow. I know.
So this is during the good that kind of they got the World Championship in the 70, was it 80 or 81 or something like that?
Yeah. Yep. So Earl Weaver, John Rubenstein, those kinds of people.
Cal Ripken, was he there?
Absolutely.
Jim Palmer was gone.
Jim
Eddie
Palmer,
Murray.
Eddie Murray. Yep,
Wow,
absolutely.
that was a good team.
It was a great team. That was a lot of fun to root for. I was a little younger at that point, so in my teenage years we didn't have much success, but that's it. I mean, since I moved to New York in '86, so I've been here for a long time, and I guess I've sort of adopted the Yankees as just my hometown team.
See, I already knew that, Brent.
I was hoping when he said '86, I'm like, he could be a Mets fan.
I could be a Mets fan.
He and I, when we talked, already discussed this.
Is it some kind of unwritten rule that anyone with the name of Paul Greenberg must be a Yankees fan or something like that?
Actually, it's in the bylaws.
That's right. We have a clan, actually.
Is there a Paul Greenberg society in the works here? Or?
No, it's a clan.
Don't tell
It's a
anybody.
clan.
It's
We have a clan.
Gotta be careful about those clans, man.
No, with a C. It's with a C. This one.
I have to
okay.
tell you.
No,
It's
wait.
been a
You forgot
real-
to ask the other. No.
Oh,
You
you want me to
didn't
ask
ask
that
the
one
other-
too?
You still have. You have
Okay.
to. Just good.
All right. So, do you have a favorite NFL team?
So I grew up as a Redskins fan, of course. The Joe Gibbs era, when he won Super Bowls with 3 different
Yep.
quarterbacks, was pretty
Dogs.
Yeah.
awesome. Not much of a football team / Commanders fan these days. It's just hard to rally around, and not just because they're no good. Just, I don't know. I'm not as excited about the team. I have to say, the last couple of years, I've really been rooting for KC. I love Mahomes. I think Mahomes is fun to watch. Seems like a good guy. So exciting. No look jump passes. You don't get better than that.
Yeah, well, he is a remarkable guy. I'm still a Giants fan. I'll always be a Giants fan.
Fair enough. And I'm
Chris,
taking you're a Rams fan. That's my guess.
What did you say that?
He is literally the most diehard Rams fan I've ever met.
What a year for you.
Hey, it's not over yet. I'm gonna enjoy it until the next Super Bowl.
There you go.
Well, actually, you'll enjoy it till the first game of the next season.
Well, yeah, I know.
Then you turn into another creature.
Yeah, I go back into my hole again.
That's right. Basically, he basically becomes dangerous at that point.
So, Paul Greenberg, it has really been a pleasure having you.
Thank you for
And
having me.
I couldn't help just going off screen and just watching you guys talk. It was really a treat.
Are you up for coming back at some point?
I would love that.
Oh yeah, no, you can count on it. Actually, I need to introduce you to Paul Greenberg. That's my.
Oh my
You remember when you talked about fishing? Or you mentioned fishing and fishing a little earlier.
Of course.
His famous book is called Four Fish.
Four Fish, yeah.
Right. And maybe we'll have a show with the 3 of us on, because all of us literally could complement each other in our conversation.
Wait a minute, Paul Greenberg, the one I just met. Have you ever done anything with CRM?
Never. Sorry, not a thing.
We moved more in your direction than you moved in ours. Believe me.
Right.
You did, which I appreciate. Thank you very much.
Right.
But you know media really well. I'm really impressed.
Well, we've spent a lot of time with it.
I know. I know.
But what you're doing to me it really is genuinely visionary, and it's also just, from my perspective anyway, obviously critical. I honestly, our shtick is literally the millennials are literally at the point where in a few years they're going to they are transforming the global decision making, all global decision making. They will own it. Now, right now, again, CEOs tend to be older, but even there's some big tech companies who are run by millennials now, like SAP is run by a 38-year-old, things like that. And
he's only 38.
Yeah, Christian Klein's 38. And all these things are happening now to the point that you can't, any business, I don't care what industry you're in, needs to be aware of the fact that your customer base and your employee base is changing so dramatically that you've got to change with that. And as far as content goes, you're at what you're doing has literally been not only visionary, but the leading edge that people need to get behind.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate your kind words, and I really appreciate your having me on and spending so much time. It means a lot. So thank you both for everything. I really had a great time.
Well, be prepared for coming back.
Absolutely.
And thank you.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
So, Paul,
All
you got to stick around because I'm going to say we're going to do our usual ending because I always end with saying on behalf of our guest. So,
Okay.
on behalf of Paul Greenberg, I'm Brent Leary.
I don't remember who I am anymore.
Okay.
All right.
And on that
Thank you so
note,
much, guys.
we are the CRM Playaz, and
All
there's
right.
many.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.